Alrighty, well, thank you for those of you that are joining us here today for our workshop on corporate innovation. My name's Cameron Law, and I serve as the Executive Director here at the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and I'm joined by one of our entrepreneurs in residence, Dr. Brian Gladden. We're excited to have him leading the workshop here today. For those of you that are getting familiar with the Carlson Center, we serve as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education, community, and support to enable startup founders of all backgrounds to start and launch their businesses. We are on this mission to make innovation and entrepreneurship pervasive throughout the greater Sacramento region, and really working towards this larger vision as serving as a premier hub for innovation and entrepreneurship in the greater Sacramento region. We serve entrepreneurs across what we call the entrepreneurial journey. So really from that idea to seed stage, and help you get to other resources in our ecosystem. And we have 3 core areas of programming: the discover, build, and launch. And today's workshop is part of our discover sets of programs to provide you with the tools, frameworks to bring your idea to fruition and or your product or service to market. And so we're excited to dive into corporate innovation and how you can spur out new ideas to grow your corporation or organization. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Brian, who will be leading the charge here today. If you do have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or use the raised hand feature, and we'll bring those on in. So take it away, Brian.
Cool. Thank you, Cameron. Welcome, everybody. So we had quite a few register, and maybe they're coming in late. So thanks for 4 of you guys for being here. So I'm curious to know where you're from, or what company you're with, where you're dialing in from. So love to have you unmute or even have your video. So maybe I can call on you since we're a small group, if anybody wants to go first. Rui, go ahead. Oh, we can't hear you, Rui. Nope. While you work on that, maybe Pablo can introduce himself.
Okay, it took me a moment to get situated, but so my name is Pablo Aguirre. I'm in Reno, Nevada. I teach at a school called Hug High School. I happen to be in my classroom right now, and this is selfish of me, but this is a brand new school. I got a brand new science room. I'm just freaking out. I have a Promethean board and a television monitor that's nice size. It's like the widescreen I have at home. So it's pretty cool. So anyway, I'm excited to be here because I'm into innovation.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, Rui, gotcha.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Cameron and Brian, for this session here. I'm Rui. I'm the founder of Run Bank, and I'm in the sustainable fintech sector, and excited to be part of this community in Sacramento.
Are you here locally?
Well, it originated in the East Coast, but I'm going to be there within the next couple of days.
Oh, wonderful! Welcome. And Pablo's in the we say Reno's in the region, right? We're close enough. And how about Stefan? Where are you from?
Hi, I'm from Los Angeles. I run a biotech company called Innovate Therapeutics, and I'm in my car right now, so I can't participate too much. Sorry.
Understand. Yep. Be safe. All right. Welcome. And how about who's coming in from the iPad?
I think they're still trying to connect to audio, so I will
gotcha.
Let them know when they come in. So
okay. Well, welcome, and we'll definitely love to get questions from you guys and share. Hopefully others will join us as they can. I want to share my screen and we'll get going. I always have more content than time, so just a second. Switch that up. All right, should be able to see it good. Wonderful. So as Cameron said, today talking about corporate innovation, one of my favorite things to talk about because it's such a broad topic. We can't obviously become experts in just an hour and a half. We're definitely going to touch on a lot of the mindsets and fundamentals that the frameworks and tools we can use to help companies become better at innovation, right? And that's the key thing. So my agenda for today for you is to help us document our corporate identity and strategic direction, engage employees to create a culture of innovation. We're going to talk about documenting your business model so we can innovate it, changing our mindset on the need to innovate, assessing our current state of innovation readiness, becoming an ambidextrous organization, learning how to exploit and explore, and then understanding the customer's problems to successfully innovate. So that's what we're going to talk through. So I throw up this first slide just because the innovation funnel, many of you from corporate innovation probably have some sort of program, an incubator, an accelerator. You've been in one. A lot of companies will have some sort of process. Hey, we have an idea. Then what happens? And the reason I throw this up now, we're going to come back to this, is this whole idea of getting ideas, putting them through a funnel. Strategy alignment is a big thing. And if we don't know how to evaluate new ideas, new opportunities in this corporate space, specifically aligned to our strategy, then we can be going in a million different directions. And it's for decision-making, for helping us get to achieve our goals. This is a key thing. And that leads us straight into culture and purpose. Innovate to where? Where is this new innovation idea where the company says, well, we need to innovate? Where are we going? Where are we taking these new innovation ideas? And this all starts with your culture and your purpose. Who are we? What's our corporate identity? These are one of the key things we want to touch on today, as well as what do we want to be when we grow up as a company, right? What's our strategic direction? We need to have this Northern Star guiding us, right? This purpose, this identity, so that we know what a good idea looks like. So if any idea comes across your boardroom, your executive table, and you say, oh, I think we can make some money at that. Well, first question is, does that align with who we are, our purpose as a business? If not, just because you can make $1 doesn't mean you should pursue it. If we have these things in place, corporate identity, what we want to be when we grow up, it makes empowering our employees easier. It makes decision-making better for them because they know what to align to. And it all starts with that culture. You've probably seen this before, Simon Sinek, the golden circle, kind of starting with why. And that really is the same thing from a company perspective. We really have to start with why we exist. And this is always outward, customer facing, not inward about us, the company. What are we here to do, right? And the why, right? The what is what we sell, product, service, how we do it, that's simple. But why we exist, that shared purpose can help build inclusive cultures in the company. If people know why they're there, what they stand for, your customers also want to know what you stand for. So as you innovate, we can easily start to align these new opportunities with who we want to be in the future, how we're going to get there, how we're going to achieve this 20, 30-year end goal of our shared purpose and why. Just a few examples of some good purpose statements in case you haven't seen a lot. Credit Karma, simple, to help people be their best financial selves. So you think about that, that's very outward facing, right? It's about the customer, to help people be their best financial selves, not about Credit Karma being the biggest, credit company. That's more inward facing, right? That could be a near-term mission statement, but a vision statement is 20, 30 years in the future, really, long-term, and it's always about the customer and the greater good you're trying to achieve. Same with Kellogg's, to nourish families so they can flourish and thrive. I love the Starbucks one, to inspire and nurture human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. So when you think about these, you can see that if a new idea comes up, you can say, does that align with who we want to be, our purpose in the future, right? Doesn't it have to do with what you sell right now, right? That product, that widget, but it has to do with who you want to be when you grow up as a business, who you're trying to serve, and the bigger, greater good. That can really help people with decision-making on pursuing these new opportunities to innovate. So helping us trying to create this culture of innovation, we start with that why, that purpose. And it's important to have a culture of innovation so that we can foster these new ideas. But it's not easy, right? Because culture is made up of your beliefs, your values, and the things that you practice in the organization. And it's made up of everybody's contribution to your culture, not just you, the executive. And why it's so important to tie innovation to culture is that innovation is everyone's responsibility. And if you start, putting more work on people, it's after hours trying to come up with a new idea, then we have to understand, well, what's going on in our culture, in our business? Is that actually going to be sustainable, right? Understanding our purpose is critical to sustaining this innovation. Otherwise, it could just be, I'm working on something for a couple hours this week, but I don't have time next week. Is that everybody's jumping in, everyone has skin in the game. We all know where we're going. We all know who we want to be when we grow up and why we're here. So we have passion and we have skin in the game to achieve this end goal versus just a paycheck. And that's why culture is so important to creating this sustainable culture of innovation. Unfortunately, almost 70% of everyone's employees are not engaged in their current jobs. So if you've got people that aren't engaged, it's really difficult to have them do more, right? Hey, Rui, go do this on your off hours on the weekend, try and get some validation of this problem, go pursue that new idea you had. Well, if people aren't really engaged, it's difficult to get them to put work in, to foster these new ideas and initiatives, lower our risk, right? And so we have to really understand what are these subsurface cultural issues by engaging our employees, talking to them, asking them, so that we can really bubble them up, making sure you have those right folks there that can help drive innovation, that everyone knows where we're going and what's expected of them. Otherwise, say, go do something and eventually it's probably going to crash and burn, or people aren't just going to do it. They see what's in it for me versus the greater good and understanding where we're going. So that first section of just creating that culture of innovation, knowing your shared purpose, is a big key for innovation in general. So let's say we have that done and we're really good. We got a great culture. Then we want to start to look at our business model. How do we create value right now? And I'm curious if any of you have used tools like the business model canvas or lean canvas previously, and I'd love to hear you share. So maybe I'll call on Rui. Is this something you guys have used before?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yes, a business model canvas is a tool that we have used. And it's quite interesting because it's able to kind of define different areas, whether it's, the problem and the solution, and break down even into revenue streams and so forth. So it helps guide, it gives us direction, it gives us options. And then from there, it's just some sort of a base or a blueprint to move on to a next step, which eventually can be more focused and more narrow.
Great. Thanks for the insights, and glad you're using it. And welcome, Emma. I see Emma joined us. So Pablo, how about you? Is the business model canvas or lean canvas something you've used before?
Well, since I'm in education, for the most part, we're silos. So we're hoping that if math does its thing and English does its thing and science is doing its thing, across the 4 years, we'll walk away with an educated student. And then we have either social pressures, political pressures, or pressures because of who's in administration that says, hey, we're going to focus on this. Right now our district is on a big equity kind of thing nationwide. I think that's a big deal in schools. So it's not new. So we don't have anything cohesive. But I'm familiar with Blue Ocean strategy and the canvas that they make. And so I'm actually doing a book study with two other people to introduce the idea to my school.
Good. Well, I just did 2 weeks ago a Blue Ocean strategy.
Missed it. I missed it.
Okay. Well, we recorded it. You can listen to it. Blue Ocean's one of my favorite things, and we'll touch on it later. But their strategy canvas, where you see your value curve, is one of my favorite tools. But the business model canvas, it will show here really is basically the original tool, the leading tool to help us understand how we can create, deliver, and capture value on one piece of paper. So no longer do entrepreneurs create 200-page business plans, right? It's literally a one-page document, maybe a 12 to 14 slide deck that you talk to stakeholders, investors about. And that's the same for companies now. It's got to be quick, dynamic, iterative, because everything's always changing. And it's really an executive summary of how your business operates, how you create value. And for schools and public sector, nonprofits, social impact ventures, a adaptation of this tool that you might want to look into, there's two. One's called the Mission Model Canvas, and Steve Blank and Alex Osterwalder, who created Strategizer, created that, as well as the Impact Business Model Canvas, which just kind of adds your social impact down on the bottom as well. But it really is the foundation where we want to always start.
What was the second one?
Called the Impact Business Model Canvas.
Thank you.
Yeah. So understanding how we create that value, we can look at really this right side is our demand side, all about the customer, their needs. And then the back side is the supply side, right? Us, our partners, our key resource activities. And these 9 elements can really help you understand how you're creating value from that product or service you're creating. And that value prop is the thing you're offering in the middle. And this we're going to spend a lot of time in the next few sections on, because this model can help us understand from 9 different points of view, how can we innovate, from the thing we do now to a certain customer and a certain channel and a certain revenue. What if we tweak that a little bit? What could that look like for new customers, new revenue streams, new channels? A quick just example, if we only focused on the thing we make, our solution, which is what everybody loves to focus on, that technology, that widget, that service you provide, that's wonderful, but that's only a piece of the pie, right? The streaming, the renting of the DVDs, if you're Netflix when they first started. And if people just focused on that, you wouldn't really see the rest of the business model, between movie lovers and brands, how we gain revenue from ad placement, all of the different resources, algorithms, our customer base, our brand, the production of movies, all the things we do. This tells our story. And when you're able to put this on one piece of paper, one canvas, you can then very succinctly tell your value to any of your stakeholder groups, but also see at a high level how you create that value and where maybe you want to look to change it. Maybe it was becoming more efficient over here, or different partners. And we're going to touch on that in a little bit around innovating each of these elements. One of the things that we like to look at, and so do all these leading framework providers, is looking at it from 3 lenses, design thinking, which is this thing I'm thinking about desirable, right? Does anyone want it? Can we make money at it? Viability, and then feasibility. Can we build it? And if we can do all 3 of these things with this new idea, we really have this innovation trinity where now we have something. If you only have 2 of these things, that opportunity for innovation is probably not going to go very far. And so we can actually overlay design thinking right on top of your business model canvas. So it's a great way to think about it from this perspective of a new idea. We look at, okay, on the right side, does anybody really care about this? Is that a problem we're trying to, solve that people care about? Can we actually make this thing or this service? And then sanity check, can we actually make money at it? And these 3 things, if we look at, are a real quick back of the napkin way for us to think about our model from a high level. Once we understand how we create, deliver, and capture value, we've got that great culture already set up. The next thing we kind of want to think about is, well, some people say, well, I'm doing great. Why do I even need to innovate? And this whole need to innovate, continuous innovation we talk about, is critical to any company's survival. And we'll talk through some of this now. I'm assuming you agree, or you probably wouldn't be here as far as innovation. So hopefully some of these points you can take to others inside your organization. But innovate or become obsolete is one of my favorite thoughts and quotes. And these 2 points will prove it. In the past 50 years, the average business model lifespan has fallen from about 15 years to less than 5, according to Boston Consulting Group just recently. That's huge. So, which means our business model is changing very quickly. We have to understand it so that we know how to innovate it. And we need to understand what's affecting our business model. Otherwise, you're probably going to end up like the 52% of the Fortune 500 in the last 15 years, they have become extinct, right? You think about Compaq, and you think about Kodak, and you think about Blockbuster, and all of these companies that are gone, that were Fortune 500. They did not innovate their business model, right, to keep up with the needs of the customer. So this is why continuous innovation is so important. One of the first things we can do is just start to identify and examine our environment. So if we pretend our business model canvas is here in the middle, your business, we need to understand what are the forces that are attacking or giving us opportunities every day around the world. Something's happening. So industry forces, new competitors, new substitute products, technology here as far as key trends, social, cultural trends, technology enabling the speed of innovation, market forces, maybe there's things going on here in markets, and then macroeconomic, which we're all facing, right? COVID, wars, gas, inflation. These are putting pressure on supply chains, your partners, your customers' ability to actually, have revenue, disposable income. So what's going on that is pushing and pulling on your business model at any given time? And it's important to know that, because all of these things can be opportunities if we are actually identifying them, especially in crisis, when most of us are trying to just keep the lights on the past couple of years in COVID, right? Things like pandemic and COVID are actually perfectly ripe for invention. So necessity, right, is literally the mother of invention. Think about what's been happening in the last few years with COVID and all the changes to the customer's needs. So the question is, how have you, from a corporate innovator standpoint, been changing your offerings to meet the customer's new needs? Most people are focused on their internal, right? Cutting payroll, cutting costs, becoming more efficient, which is all table stakes and good. But at the end of the day, we really need to understand how we can take advantage of crisis so that we can be better off in the long run. This is a great McKinsey study from the last recession, and it basically shows us that history showing that companies that invest in innovation through a crisis significantly outperform their peers during recovery. And what it shows here was during that housing crisis in 08, 09, everyone took a dip. So you think of 100 as baseline. So everyone was, lower than normal as far as revenues. This is the S&P 500. Well, those companies in the blue line that focused on innovation versus the rest of their competitors in the black line were significantly 30% better off on their revenues post-crisis than their competitors. So that's a big deal. So people, customers, right, they understand the loyalty. If you're loyal to them, they're going to be loyal to you. So most people say, let's cut our staff, let's cut our costs, focus internally. But if you're not focusing on the customer, they're going to find a way to satisfy their need, right? They're going to move to a new vendor. So how can we focus on the customer through crisis to make sure that we keep those people? That's just one example. So let's actually show an example here. There's about 5 examples here on the screen. And the question is, how can we quickly take advantage of new opportunities, right, that arise, like COVID? Well, almost overnight, we've probably all experienced these things, right? That overnight we have kids going online. 250 million kids in 2 weeks, right, went online. So Pablo knows better than anybody, right? You're doing remote schooling. The education establishment would have told you you're insane if you would have told them, oh, in 2 weeks we have to have 250 million kids online. They would have said it's impossible. Well, it's necessity, so it happened, right? Just we make it happen. Same with entertainment. We're all at home for the last 2 years, so we want to be entertained. Disney Plus achieved what Netflix did in 7 years. They did it in 5 months, that many subscribers. So this just shows us that, technology, as an example of COVID being online, remote users, the need arose. There was a customer or vendor there ready to satisfy that need and help meet those new needs of the customer. The question is, are we in a position in our companies? Do we have frameworks, processes, knowledge, skill sets to take advantage of things like COVID when they arise, right? And that's an easy one because it affected all of us. The problem is that only 21% of executives feel they actually have the knowledge and resources to innovate successfully. And only 6% of execs are satisfied with their company's innovation performance. So everyone wants to innovate. Even if you say, great, I want to innovate through a crisis, and I want to take advantage of opportunities, most people just aren't satisfied or even have the knowledge to know what to do. So this is where formal systems come into place. The bottom line is innovation can work better when a formal system exists. Accenture. So innovation should be no different than HR, than your finance system, than your Lean Six Sigma, your onboarding of an employee, right? We have all these formal processes, but when it comes to innovation, it's usually, oh, that's a great idea. Really go work on that on the weekend, right? And, come back and let us know what happened. And that's not a formal system, right? To reduce risk, checks and balances, get buy-in, really have those, milestone gates to move things forward. So we need to understand, how can we create some formal systems to really help innovation flourish better? So I'm curious here, maybe you guys can unmute. Esther, welcome. Do any of you have any formal systems, frameworks, processes that you use around innovation? Don't be shy.
The biggest innovation that schools have made in the last 150 years was make the building bigger. Outside of that, it looks the same. You have desks, you have tablets, which used to be chalkboards, and blackboards on the walls. All of that is pretty much the same, except, other people innovated and gave us TV sets, computers, iPads, and whatnot. So we don't have a system.
But at least a little bit, it sounds like, you like most schools have had to go online, be remote teaching them soon, use technology a little bit better, right? iPads, Chromebooks, things like that. So at least at some level you're innovating, but maybe there's not a formal process to take an idea and put it through to the end, right?
No, it's all the innovations come from externally, and unfortunately, they are somewhat imposed by either the nature of systems, of circumstances, or a district says, we're going to do this. Yeah. And the staff are often reluctant.
Yeah, sure. Right, because they're not bought into it. They don't know why we're doing it. It's just put on you versus you having skin in the game and agreeing to solving a problem for your students or yourselves.
Yeah. So kind of like that 21% that think they can't do it even if they wanted to.
Got it. Good. How about any others out there? Any formal processes anyone uses?
Brian, isn't the fact of being a startup kind of an imperative to really innovate, right? Because if we don't, we can survive, right? So I think the process is trying to look at the competition and see, where we can make a difference, where we can be better, because innovation is key. And I said specifically when one is starting and we are developing a solution and we want to make a difference in the market, we really need to innovate and we really need to be able to find ways to differentiate ourselves. So startups have no choice but to really find ways to innovate with whatever resources are available.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're a startup, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Yes, and so startups are great because usually the startup, you the entrepreneur, has some idea of some problem that exists, as you mentioned, from some other existing alternative competitor that's not doing well enough. It doesn't satisfactorily meet the customer's needs. So you're solving that gap, that problem. So then the question becomes, what formal innovation processes do you use, whether you're a startup or a corporate environment, to quickly reduce your risk, validate the problem and the solution, and then get to market? And the old way of doing things was just build something, go out and try and sell it, and then come back and reiterate it. And that takes too long. It's too much money, too much time, too much resources. So there's a lot of better ways now of finding out and validating things ahead of time before we build stuff. So great points from the iPad there. So thank you. And who, didn't catch your name. Oh, okay. So one of the things that we can do is start to put some structure in place in our company. And this can be, a startup as well as a corporate, but generally we're talking about corporations. It's great if the CEO says, yes, we want to innovate, and everybody knows where they're going, the culture, our purpose, but that in itself is not enough. We can kind of boil this into three big buckets if we look at it from, are we even ready as a company to innovate? It's wonderful if Rui comes and says, I got this great idea. And now we all sit around the table and go, cool, now what do we do? So we need to have things in place to help us quickly bring something to fruition or to kill it, right? If it's not a good idea. And the first bucket we can think about is leadership support. And this is really a readiness assessment that we can look at to say, okay, do we have strategic guidance, a clear strategy that defines on where we play, what markets we play in, again, back to our purpose, where we want to go. And if you dig in deeper here in these kind of a Likert scale 1 to 5, beginners to experts, we have little experience and knowledge to we're profound experience and deep practical knowledge in some areas. And usually people are 1 to 3 area. The second piece would be resource allocation. Do you actually allocate resources available for innovation? So let's say you're a manufacturer of some widget and somebody has a new idea. Do they have to fight to actually get people's time, get time on the machine, get R&D involved, get product development, and all these things to create something, or is resources already allocated to different teams to help them move ideas forward? And then we look at portfolio management, exploring new opportunities versus running the core business. And these are very different that we're going to talk about in a second. Different skills, different resources needed, and usually different people involved. And so we kind of look at this saying, okay, great, maybe we do all these things and we're really good at leadership saying, let's go forward and we're going to allocate resources. Well, then we need to understand, is the organization actually set up to move an idea forward versus just the leader saying, go for it? Is there legitimacy and power in the organization for innovation? Do we give innovation teams and projects in the organization legitimacy? So if Rui comes to me and says, hey, Brian, I need your time this week to be on the team to go out and validate this new idea. And I say, sorry, man, can't help you. I got too many other things on my plate. Is that something that is Rui's responsibility, or now is it the executive down saying everybody is going to be part of the innovation teams at some specific level, hours a week, or you're on certain teams, and we give power to those people in charge, deemed by management executives in charge of these ideas. That also leads us to the bridge to the core. So if you're building something new, or even if it's a service, the skills and resources for those core things you do that maybe you're trying to augment, you're trying to change slightly for a substitute or adjacent market you want to break into, do you actually have access to go into those groups and work with those people and have the power to engage them and have them on your team? And then rewards, right? Nobody's going to do everything for free. Thank yous are great, but we need to have incentives in place to help us quickly vet ideas. It doesn't mean just successful ideas, but any ideas. Failure should be rewarded, because a quickly vetted idea that we say, no, this is not going to work, and we kill it, that could save a company millions of dollars from somebody saying, let's just build it and sell it and market it. And, a year later you say, oh, it didn't work and we lost $10 million. So we need incentives in place for the people to actually do the work, and failure and learning is rewarded, not just success. And the last piece is, you could have all these things in place. We got a bridge, we got up to the core incentives, we got management saying, let's do it. But if you have no idea what the heck you're doing down here, you really don't know how to use tools, innovation frameworks, you don't know how to do any of these other things, it's difficult. So do we know how to use innovation tools across the org? Do we have a process for innovating? So if an idea comes in, where does it go? Who vets it? Is there a leadership team? Is there a scorecard, right? Is there a checklist of what's next? What's the first step? Maybe it's your business model. Then who looks at that and says, yes, there's enough data and evidence here to move to the next step. Let's engage the Tiger team. And do people actually have continuous innovation and skills development to help, quickly assess ideas and move them forward? So in your organization, do you have these things set up? And if you're over here in the ones and twos, a great idea is a dime a dozen. If you really don't have a way to move it forward, it's going to be very difficult to innovate in a company. So we have to have these things in place. Entrepreneurs, usually a small team, are much better to do this because they can move quick on a dime, and it's usually only a few people doing everything. So much harder in a company, a large corporate environment. Won't spend a lot of time here because we just went through them, but this is just a deeper dive into each section, so you have a little easier view, and I don't have to get a magnifying glass out to see everything. But as you go through this, take a look at these and do your own self-assessment. Where do you think your company is, on this Likert scale, 1 to 5? And the key that I would recommend is, as you do these 3 sections, find and pull out those 3 or 4 areas that you're the weakest at, and make a plan around those to improve those first, right? Don't try and boil the ocean. So now that we know how we create value, we've got this great culture in place, and we've got, all these tools and practice and executive, buy-in, and we're ready to move forward. What do we do next? And so before we jump in there, I wanted to just, open up for any questions and see what your thoughts were on these high-level frameworks and areas of focus to help us create some sort of structure around innovation in your company. Any thoughts or comments?
Sorry, I was going to share that one area that my company struggles a lot with is that last piece you talked about, the skills development. Like, we know that our leadership is very interested in innovation, and they get that, that's the way forward. But it's actually being able to put something together. Like, that's something we've just struggled with, and I don't know how we get around that.
Yeah, that is Esther. Yeah, thank you for the comment. Yeah, that's hard. And I think self-awareness, understanding that that's a gap, is the first step, right? So doing a self-assessment like this, for executives, have to be bought in. Otherwise, it's really difficult if it's middle management below, because you just don't have the credibility and money, right? Budgets. Mm-hmm. But if they understand that, hey, we need to get people into a training class, right? Pay for a class, or let them spend an hour, a day on a YouTube or a free class like this from the Carlson Center, right? Mm-hmm. That those skills development are important, because now you're going to use those to help speed up and accelerate the time to market, to validate an idea or to kill it, right? Which all that can save the company a significant amount of money, or drive new revenue. So that the key piece is having executives realize that it's not just about a good idea, that we actually have to develop the skills so that people can actually put this into practice.
Yeah.
Sometimes this self-assessment executives will say, wow, okay, I didn't realize that. And if they have, the whole C-level team do it, not just themselves, and they come back with ones and twos over here, then that will really start to get the ball rolling. Usually say, okay, let's get an HR person involved, and let's have some hours set aside or budget for skills development. And that's really a good way to start it.
And you're going to share this slide you're sharing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Good comments. Anyone else?
Brian, could you go back to the first of these three? And so I'm in a similar thing in the sense that we do skill development all the time, teachers do, but it's not for developing innovation, but usually for implementing a new fad for teaching. Sometimes, it's they buy a kit, so to speak, and say, hey, you got to use these scripts and everything, and you go through it. I'm fortunate because the students I teach do not affect the performance of the school, so I'm way below the radar. My students, they're just happy if they get credit because it doesn't affect anything else, like English, math. I teach kind of the bottom. So how does somebody like me, and I don't know the answer, I really don't. I am applying a strategy, which that's part of the reason why I'm here. But how do you get someone like in my shoes saying something to leadership where it doesn't sound like you guys suck?
Yes, that's a great question. I'll answer it a couple of points. When we think about innovation in this three sections here, this assessment, we really have to look at it from both bottom up, let's say you, Pablo, right, the teacher, the bottom up, the ground level, as well as the top down, right, getting the superintendent, the principal, the school board involved, as your example. Company would be the same thing. I'm in a company and I have this idea. I'm the champion. I'm going to take it to my boss. And we really need to get also C-level coming down at it. The first thing to really look at is getting someone to listen, the champion, saying, hey, we have some ideas. We want to help move the organization forward, whether it's revenue or it's social impact, better education for students as an example, or better patient outcomes for healthcare as an example. We've got to find that champion that can help tell the story, at least have a conversation. Then they'll probably be just like you, say, okay, where do we start? One of the first things to do is to do this self-assessment. So you let your peers, the executives, do it. Maybe call it the school board, superintendent, say, hey, we're trying to innovate as a school district, as an example, or a school. Do we have the things in place to even make it a reality versus wasting time and money and a bunch of resources that we just don't have? And if people do this assessment, then they can self-buy into it, right? Like, hey, I know we don't have these things. What are some steps we can take to implement better resource allocation, right? A better, clear strategy of where we're going. And these are baby steps you can do to get a champion from the bottom, as well as we have to get some sort of champion from the C-level. If you don't get that champion from the C-level, honestly, innovation is really, really difficult to be sustainable in any organization. It just is going to probably, sputter out. So you've got to find that person who believes in innovating like you do, which goes back to the purpose. It can't just be about this new thing, the new idea. It has to be about how the new idea propels the organization forward on that shared purpose. And that's what goes back to that culture, right? Like, we can have better education for our students with this new idea. And that really helps people buy into why you're doing the new idea. These are tough questions, and there's not a silver bullet. So, but hopefully these frameworks and tools and processes help us put more, structure around this, like we do everything else in our school or our business or our startup. That kind of leads us into this idea of, we've got some structure now, we've got some process in place, we know how we operate our business model. what is this idea about becoming an ambidextrous organization, right? We're talking about, again, corporate innovation. How can we exploit and explore at the same time? It's really difficult. We talked about entrepreneurs on here. Entrepreneurs have a little bit easier, right? Because there's nothing to exploit. We're starting from scratch. So we're just exploring all new areas. But if you're driving a $10 million business or $1 billion business, you're not just going to pivot. You want to keep doing what you're doing, right? Exploiting that, but also go explore new territory, right? New revenue streams. And that's really difficult to do. So we call this becoming an ambidextrous organization, right? Doing two things at once. And this visual can help us understand in this conversation with executives that there are different skills, different mindsets, different resources, and different business models usually. So most of us, for in a company, in a corporate environment, we're over here on the right. We're an existing business model. Let's say you're making, $1 million a year. You're doing well. You know your customers. You know what you're selling. You're trying to get better at executing, whether that's a product or service. You're getting better at forecasts and planning. You're trying to exploit your market, take things away from your competition, right? That's normal business. So that improving area is just table stakes. You're continually getting better. Well, that business model is proven, and what you do is proven. This other area about exploring new space is completely different. And you'll have different people involved. It's much more risky. Right now, you're searching for customers with unmet demand, the problems you can solve. You're experimenting. You don't even know what's going to work. Build, measure, learn. You're killing ideas. We're taking a lot of different small bets and seeing what's going to stick and what's not. And this mentality, we can create physically multiple variations of our business model, document our business model canvas that are very different than our current existing business model. And when we do that, then sometimes management will say, I thought you were basically trying to take what we currently do and you want to change that. It's not what we're saying. Do what you do, but realize we're going to have multiple business models. Think of Pepsi, right? Pepsi doesn't have one business model. They probably have 500, right? There's 100 different brands under PepsiCo. So vitamin water is going to act much different than Coke, different channels, different revenue streams, right? Different partners, different customer segments. So as you're starting to explore new space, adjacent markets, substitute products, right? Anything, right? You're trying to disrupt a new market. These business models are going to be vastly different than these that you're currently in. When we, first of all, realize that from a mindset, then we can start to say, okay, who are the right people? What are the processes we need to put in place to quickly vet this idea that has nothing to do with disrupting our current business? Whatever we look at, we have risk. And our goal as an entrepreneur or a corporate innovator is to reduce that risk. In our current world, an existing business that's doing well, your goal is to improve and grow. You have risk of being disrupted, right? The taxi market, Uber and Lyft disrupted, right? Airbnb disrupted the hotel market. It doesn't mean they set out to disrupt them. They could have created a blue ocean, which is, completely different. We're creating something, but that was collateral damage. Or you might have a fintech like Rui that's trying to disrupt the banking world, right? You're trying to disrupt somebody else, mortgage, it doesn't matter, traditional banking. That's happening every day, right? Some entrepreneur is trying to enter or disrupt the current market because they have a better way of doing something. So you as this existing business, you're trying to keep from being disrupted. So that's your risk. What do we do new? How do we innovate? How do we better do our processes so that we're not disrupted? Down here, if we have new ideas, we have risk of innovation risk that probably 90% of our ideas are not worth the time and effort to take to market. We need to figure out what's that 1 out of 10 ideas, and not just by guessing and throwing stuff against the wall, but by literally going through processes to validate or invalidate that there's enough evidence and market data that customers will pay for this new idea. This is where we do a lot of experimentation, right? Testing, kind of that lean startup mentality within a corporate environment. Build, measure, learn. And building doesn't mean building a finished product, but right, maybe prototypes and experiments. So what we do down here is a much different skill set than over here. And when companies realize that, then they can say, okay, let's, everybody has a couple hours a week that you're putting towards innovation. Google, Facebook, Amazon, LinkedIn, right? All these big companies, Apple, everybody spends time innovating, right? Brainstorming, ideating on tiger teams. You're part of, this product line. You have part of your week every week spending hours coming up or being on a team to innovate new ideas, versus it's not one person's job to do that, right? But you also do your day job and you continually in your business model and exploit and do what you do. So think about this portfolio of innovation and business models in your business. And if you're just starting out, you're down here. All of us entrepreneurs, we're down here, right? We're trying to innovate something. So we have a lot of risks. We haven't proven anything yet. So this is how we want to eventually get up here where we have a proven business model. Now we're just trying to keep from, being disrupted ourselves. Here's a good example of Amazon, right? Amazon, the bookstore, and Amazon, the web services, either one, up here in the top right, it's a proven model, right? Huge returns, biggest companies in the world. That model is proven. Now they're obviously trying to continually innovate, do things better so they're not disrupted. But they have other ideas internally at Amazon, right, that are different models. Amazon Local, Amazon Auctions, Amazon Fire Phone, right? These are all different ideas that the employee comes up with. Now we say, okay, how do we vet these? Let's just document our model. Let's go out and talk to customers. Let's validate we can actually build these things. Offer them to somebody, like kind of a pitch deck. Will you buy it, for this price? And if we don't get enough positive validation, we're going to kill the idea, right? So it's very different than trying to fit one of these things into the existing Amazon model. That's not how it works. I want to stop there and just see if you have any questions about this idea of portfolio and looking at exploit and explore. Does that help light bulbs go off and give you a different way to look at things as a corporate innovator?
Brian, I have a question, if I may, which is resources, financial resources, I think ultimately can determine whether or not, all these exploration type of stage can go forward, right? Can move forward. If a company does not have the resources, then cannot explore new ideas, right? It's difficult to innovate, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you're struggling just to keep the lights on, it's tough to innovate, right? So maybe your entire business model, if you're in that case, right, is floundering. You might have to look at a new space or take a look at your sole normal business model. But you've got to have at least some resources put aside available. A big company, Amazon, those are easy examples, Tesla's. But a small mid-sized firm, 10 million a year. It doesn't mean you set $1 million aside in a bucket to draw from, but it just means that you have a process, and resources could just be, everybody has an hour a week that they put aside to work on ideas. And when we talk about resources, and it could just be a few $100s where you stand up a landing page after you've talked to customers, customer interviews, right? Very cheap, don't cost you a lot of money. Stand outside of Walmart if you're a B2C and say, hey, let me understand what you bought, right? So resources can be financially very low impact, but it also could be that you need someone to do some, CAD drawings, or we want to make sure our machines can even produce these things if we wanted to. So when you think about that, don't think about a huge pot of money set aside, but more about people, time as well.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good questions.
May I try to translate this to education?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm thinking that the disruptive or the improvement side is like teaching that moves from what exists or existed and says, okay, instead of having textbooks, we're going to buy digital versions of the textbooks. Instead of handing out tests where whatever's on the tests, we're now going to do it digitally on forms or whatever. And this is an innovation that I think it is originated within the school system. It's just not entirely absorbed by everyone at this time. Who knows if it will, but it's the idea of so now this is exploration, a thing called project-based learning, where now instead of saying this textbook or these tests, it's something completely different. And it says, hey, so students, here's a problem or here's a project, prove to me that Isaac Newton was right when he said that force is equal to mass times acceleration. How you do it is up to you. And so.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Exactly. And for me, what you described there, Pablo, was a kind of a continuum, like, baby steps, like not too far off what you do now, maybe just taking paper to digital, test. Okay. That's innovation, but, incremental, right? Not transformative or radically crazy. But as you get farther away from, as you currently do things, maybe that project-based, I think of more immersed learning, right? Like, okay, you're going to go, once a week, an hour a week, and go to some company and you're going to be immersed in what they do, like in a case study, right? Maybe you're in college or something. So that's a different way of learning. Think of also the model itself. Think of universities like, Grand Canyon University or Southern New Hampshire University, right? Who started kind of more online, and now they've got a physical brick and mortar as well. So they have changed the way that the, education was being delivered to certain, higher ed customers. So a lot of different things you could do there, different ideas on how are you going to educate your students and your population. Good examples.
Thank you.
All right. So exploring new opportunities. So we basically said we want to look at becoming ambidextrous, right? Exploit, explore. We know how our current business model creates value. We've got this great culture. We've got all these processes set up now to take this idea and move it forward. So then the big question is, well, how do we find these new opportunities, right? How do we explore for these new opportunities to find these customer problems worth solving? And we're going to come back to this term in a second, jobs to be done. It's a big concept, but we want to look at exploring, because the exploiting piece is easy. We all know that. We've been doing that for hundreds of years, right? We're just trying to do our job, company better that we're doing, and take market share. But exploring is hard. And we started with this funnel, right? And I want to come back to it because we all have, or most companies, most corporations, kind of like a startup, you have funnels, even if they're not overtly stated on a document, kind of like a sales funnel, right? Maybe you have an idea that just comes in and over email, and someone's like, okay, now what do I do with it? What most corporations do, they'll have what they call incubators, right? You have ideas, and maybe you get together and you brainstorm, whether it's a retreat or a strategic planning session, quarterly reviews, and you're like, oh, we got this idea, or it's a more formal, hackathon. And then you get a cool idea and someone says, okay, let's move that forward. A lot of the large companies will have something that looks similar to this, right? Think, again, think Amazon, Tesla's easy examples. We all hear about their case studies. They'll have something that resembles a funnel like this. And the idea is not to take every idea and think it's going to work. The goal is to put it through stages. Cool, someone has an idea. Does it align with our strategy and who we are, right back to our purpose? Now we go out and explore. Are there enough people with this problem in a business model that we can actually put together to make it worthwhile? We go through a lot of testing, experimentation. We validate that there is a problem that we can solve. We create this new offer, this MVP definition, we launch it. it goes well and we scale it up. That's the normal kind of funnel for an internal corporate accelerator. What we want to help us do is understand, how do we do this exploring? Where do we come up with these problems worth going after? The biggest single slide in this deck today is this one. And most of us love our solution. And the key mindset shift I want you to have is love the problem, not your solution. I will tell you right now, the customer does not care about your solution. They care about the problem you're solving with your solution. So if someone else can solve that problem better, they will buy that solution. So a lot of us, because we're around technology, and technology is enabling the speed of innovation, and we're in Northern California, most of us, so we're close to Silicon Valley and we're all techie. We build stuff because we can, and it doesn't mean anybody cares about it. So just because you're a coder and you can build an app doesn't mean anybody's going to buy it. So it's great for a hobby and it's cool that you can do it, but the question is there a problem you're solving, and is there enough people with that problem to make it a viable business? So we want to shift your mindset to loving the problem, not your solution. And the thought here is, starting with the solution is like building a key without a door. You have no idea, how this thing is going to fit or where it's going to go. You build something, you're trying to market and sell it, right? That's the old way of doing it. Instead, we want to focus on doors or problems we're solving. And a way for us to do this is from changing this idea of, even though we love the word problems because we all get it, it's a concept called jobs to be done. We hire products and services to get a job done. Who has heard of this before? Who has heard of this concept before? See, Pablo, no. How about Joyce, Dario, Aaron, Stephen, welcome. Emma, anybody has heard of this concept, jobs to be done?
I have.
Oh, who is that?
Esther.
Esther, great. So Esther, tell me, is it something you use or just something you kind of come across?
Just heard about it, but I haven't used it yet.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have heard of this before? Okay, no worries. So think of it this way. We all love the word problems, right? Customer problem. And I just told you that, love the problem, not your solution. But what about wants, needs, pains, gains, right? All these great adjectives. We all love them about how to describe the customer's issues you're going to solve. If we change all those words into one phrase, jobs to be done, what is the job the customer is trying to get done with your offering? That changes the mindset completely from there's a problem that I'm solving, or some want or need, versus looking at it bigger. What job is the customer trying to get done that I'm solving for them? And if you think about it, we hire products or services to get a job done. Doesn't matter if you're buying food, right, to solve hunger, or you buy a Tesla because you want transportation and it's eco-friendly. What job are we getting done? But it's not just the functional job, right? We always think of, well, this thing does this. You also need to think about the emotional and social jobs that you're getting done, right? So you as a teacher, Pablo, right? Functionally, you're teaching kids, math. Okay, great. 1 + 1 is 2. What are the emotional and social jobs that you as a teacher have to get done for those kids, right? A trusted advisor, right? Being that listener, keeping a safe space for everybody. So there's more than just functional jobs that your customer, which in your case is your students, want to get done, that they expect to have happen. So think about my hydro here, right? Probably all got a hydro on your desk. So this one is a thermoflask, and normally I have the hydro flask. Well, the question is, functionally, what does it do? Well, it just keeps the beverage cold, right? But what else? Maybe you have stickers on yours. Why? Well, emotionally, because maybe you went to Huntington Beach and spring break with the kids, and so you're like got that on there to remember that. Every time you pick it up, it makes you smile. Well, maybe it's blue because that's your favorite color versus just being, you know, simple and black. Socially, maybe you have the Hydro Flask, the first one that came out, you know, and it's got a recognizable logo and a label, so you feel, you know, cool. Think about Tesla. The very first Tesla sports cars, no one bought them because they were functional. They were very unfunctional, right? You had to stop and charge a lot. There was no network of charging stations. People with high net worth bought those sports cars for emotional and social reasons. Emotionally, because they wanted to be thought of as the cool kid on the block that had the newest cool electric car and a 17-inch touchscreen iPad, right? Socially, you wanted to be thought of as eco-friendly, right? Carbon footprint. It wasn't very functional. So that was not their goal. So when you think about what does your product or service solve, what's the job it's getting done for the user from one of these three areas? Usually we have more than one job to get done, right? It's usually one or two, if not more than that. And that is also how we can innovate, because maybe the job that's getting done right now for me as the customer is just a very basic functional job, but maybe you could get that done better as well as provide a better emotional or social job. And we only know that when we talk to our customers to find out what job are you trying to get done with this product or service, and what job's not getting done satisfactorily. And this is where those existing alternatives competition come into play. We don't want to base and baseline our offerings compared to competitors, but we want to know what existing alternatives or competitors' offerings are and how they meet the customer's jobs to get done, so we can innovate and create a leap in value. I'm going to stop there for a second and see if any light bulbs went off or your mind exploded.
So Brian, for the jobs, do you just ask the customer, like what are the jobs? Is that just how you ask it?
Good question. Not exactly. So what we really educate and talk on, and this comes back to the lean startup, jobs to be done, started with Clayton Christensen and Tony Olwick, thought leaders. They have books on this, and it really got adopted into the lean startup mentality as well. And what we do is we really interview the customer. So let's say I'm interviewing Cameron, who is my potential prospect or customer segment I'm going after. Mm-hmm. And it's not about what they will do. Hey, Cameron, what job are you getting done? What we want to do is ask past experience, past behavior, which is true evidence, and trying to understand from them what they were trying to accomplish, right? So they might not understand the term job to get done. But we want to say, hey, I know you bought a Peloton, Cameron, recently. Tell me about the experience. Why did you buy a Peloton? What was the initial reason, right? It's like, well, I didn't have time to go to the gym. I wanted to be healthy. I like biking, so I bought a Peloton. Okay, well, when did that start? What was that first thought you had about buying a Peloton? So now we're looking at triggers and really getting to that root cause of the job he wants to get done. Maybe it was functional, maybe it was social. So we're trying to dig in, kind of why, those root causes, and understand from him on these three areas. We can ask him, is it, socially, maybe he bought a gym membership because he wanted to be social, Peloton because he just didn't have the time to get to work. And so as you can beat around the bush. If they understand the term, sure, ask them, what job, but it's really about what they were trying to accomplish. And when you can dig in around emotionally, right? Their voice will go up, or they'll get animated around something, right? Like, this is my problem. This other thing I was doing was terrible, and I needed a better solution. That's more emotional, right? You can feel it. So dig in. It's like, okay, what was the emotional thing that they were trying to solve better, right? There was a pain there that was happening, or there was a gain that they didn't realize, right? So we can understand what they were trying to get accomplished. And that really is that job to get done.
And do you share this with them just so they tell you if you got it or not?
You can, but it really is a conversation, as we call them interviews, but it's really a conversation that I'm having with you. And, it's around some obviously product or service that I think I can, solve some problems with, and I know you are my customer segment, I'm going to just have that conversation with you to understand your past behaviors on, one, do the problems that I think you have, do you actually have them? So I'm going to have you tell me that, yeah, these problems exist, and why do they still exist? Why does other competitors' products weren't good enough? And what were the biggest problems you're trying to solve, right? You're prioritizing those. And maybe it was, something emotionally or social, like, these people were, maybe it's, again, eco-friendly, which is easy when you talk about social, or emotional. Maybe it's again, something that to do with the pain of not getting a job done. Healthcare is an easy example, right? You're like, oh, well, this didn't work, and all the issues maybe having to do around healthcare. So you just have that conversation to understand their biggest issues, pains, wants, needs, gains, right? All those adjectives we can use. But at the end of the day is, what were they trying to accomplish, right? And get done by buying that product. And is it currently getting done well enough? They might say, well, yeah, I bought it. It's okay. But it doesn't do X, Y, and Z. So I'm still looking for something better, right? So now oh, all right, that's some priority jobs that the existing competition doesn't do well enough. I need to dig in there and focus more on those too. Are these priority things or just nice to have things?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Great questions. This was an example. I'm gonna quickly get through just, when you think about this, think about you bought a home and you're redecorating, and you go buy a drill bit and drill at the Home Depot or Lowe's. And you drill a hole in your wall because you want to hang a painting. Is that really your end goal, the job to get done? Was your job to get done to drill a hole in your wall? No, right? So do you see any problems with this? Well, yeah, sure, right? So 1 is a hole in your wall. 2, it's messy. 3, you had to drill in the drill bit. But that wasn't even your job to get done. But you just thought that was the best way to get the job done because that was all you were aware of. But really, when we start asking the customer, well, why are you doing this? What are you trying to get accomplished? What problem, what job are you solving? They go, well, I bought a drill bit because I needed to hang a hook. Well, why do you want to hang a hook? Well, I want to hang a hook on my wall because I want to hang a painting. Okay, so now I'm understanding the job to get done is to hang a painting, right? It's not to drill a hole in my wall. The customer thought that's the only way they could actually get the job done was to drill a hole in the wall. So they went and bought a drill. So if you went into Lowe's and Home Depot and you said, yeah, I need a drill and a drill bit, the guy there is probably going to be, oh, you want a titanium drill bit, you want a diamond tip, it's going to last you 5 years. And he's thinking your job is to get the best drill or drill bit on the market, or the cheapest. And you're like, yeah, I don't care about any of that. I just want to drill a hole in my wall because I need to hang a painting. So if they understood your real job to get done, they wouldn't even sell you a drill or a drill bit. Guess what they could offer you instead? How about this? How about the extremely strong Scotch tape, mounting tape? So if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, you will see this in Velcro right next to a drill and a saw and a drill bit. Because it's getting the same job done, right? It's securing something to a wall. That's the job functionally it's getting done. But now you don't have to put a hole in your wall or have a mess because that wasn't your job in the first place. So when we think about innovation, Scotch 3M, right, said, what's the job of somebody putting a hole in the wall? Well, many times it's just to secure something to the wall. Well, what are our core capabilities that we have that we could get that job done in a different way, if not better, by not putting a hole in the wall? Maybe it doesn't hold 100 pounds, but it holds 30 pounds. So we're going to target, those people that are just putting, basic stuff on the wall. Now they can spend $10 versus, a $200 drill and drill bit and have no hole in the wall. So these are the things that when you start to look at corporate innovation, adjacent markets, substitute products, if you understand the customer's real job to get done, you can innovate to that and solve problems in different ways. Does that example help people?
I'm excited. May I share something?
Yeah.
So with those 3 circles that you showed earlier, the functional, my students walk in almost categorically, they don't care about that particular one. But that's the one I'm going to be measured against. And but what they care about is they just want to, honestly, those two things, the emotional and social, boil down into they want the time to go by as fast as possible and not be bored and while they're at it, you know, and so if I can aim for those, which I'm telling you, just got me all thrilled right now. If I aim for those, then I can do almost like Sesame Street, which entertains the kids, and then they learn the alphabet at the same time.
I love it, man. I'm going to back up. I love it. That's awesome, because what you're doing here, the education piece, functional, right? Teaching math, that's table stakes. So how do you create a leap in value for your students by doing what other teachers aren't doing? Maybe it's the emotional and social jobs to get done, right? Making it fun, making the time go fast, making the safe space, all those things.
Yeah, thank you.
Very cool.
That was beautiful.
I love it. Thank you, Pablo. Anyone else have any thoughts on this? That's okay. All right. We're getting short on time. So we're talking about frameworks, right? And how to explore and using proven methods to reduce our risk and enhance our chance for success of a new idea. And we call this both the intrapreneur and entrepreneurial method. And Lean Stack, who created the Lean Canvas, which we use a lot for entrepreneurs, adaptation of the business model canvas. It's basically, we start with the model, which we've been talking about, right? Put it on paper, not just the thing, but the entire model. Prioritize what's the riskiest, what do we not have evidence about? Then we go out and find the evidence, right? Interview, test, and get validation, and do it again, right? Until we have enough evidence that we know there's enough people with this problem that we can solve it. To do that, whether it's corporate environments, entrepreneur, doesn't matter, we have to test our ideas to reduce the risk. We can't just take an idea, go build something, and think that that's going to work the first time. We have to assume we're wrong. And we have to go out, and this spaghetti string, right? Here's our idea. It's not a straight line to get from one end to the other to launch to a product to get validation. It's stop and start, spaghetti string back and forth, right? Here's our model. The entire time we're testing our model, not just the thing that, the solution. And hopefully then we get to product market fit eventually, and revenue or social impact. And these testing things that we want to do, we want to make small bets. We don't want one big bet. The idea and the days of going all in, right? Like you're playing Hold'em and you're like, I'm all in. 50s and 60s, companies who spend millions and millions of dollars on that one thing, and they're going to build it and they hope it works. That does not exist anymore. At any one time, there is 10,000 variations of Facebook running, trying to figure out what works the best to tweak their algorithms. And 9,999 will never see the light of day. Amazon spends 50% of every day in different groups innovating and figuring out what's the next big thing, right? Hundreds and hundreds of tests a day. Most of them aren't going to work, but that is a lot cheaper than launching a product for millions and millions of dollars and building it and no one buying it. So we don't know what's the right thing. We have to make small bets and go test. And as we validate, a lot of these things are going to become aware that they're not going to make the cut. So test the model, not the solution, and focus on the customer, their jobs, their problems to get done. What we want to do is move from product innovation to business model innovation, right? Again, the business model is how you create, deliver, and capture value. Just by making this solution, right? This thing, that is not my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal is how do I monetize this profitably? That's my business model. So I have to test the entire model, not just test, can I make this? But how do I test the entire model? Do I have partners and distributors and channels? And can I make it for, less than I sell it for, right? So all of those things is your business model. So we have to test that, not the solution, the product. Here's a quote from MasterCard I like that. They're using business model canvas to move beyond features towards more integrated thinking and value creation. Again, it's about creating value for your customer, right? Not about product features and incremental innovation. A way that you can also explore, right? We're talking about new ideas that come up. We're looking at interviewing customers, understanding their jobs to get done, exploring ways to do things better. All of these 9 elements of your business model, we can actually look at and use to help us understand where we might be able to innovate. So as an example over here, under our customer segments, right? We call it market explorers. How could we sell to different segments, new markets that we don't currently sell to? Here, how do we call, if you look at customer relationship box on your business model canvas, how do we lock in customers better, right? Keep them better. So we get them, you keep them, you grow them. How do we keep them longer, right? Maybe you change the way it's a longer subscription or a contract. How do we build innovation into our channels? How do we reach more people or more effectively, more efficiently? Over here under revenue, how do we move to capture value differently? Maybe right now it's a transaction, right? I buy this for $49.99. What about a subscription model? What if they send me a new one every month, for $10? So how do you create new revenue streams, different margins, lower costs? So in each of these buckets, you can look at your business model and examine how you do business now and try and ideate, come up with new ways of innovating your model to get either new customers, more customers, higher value customers, right? New markets, all these different things. Here's an example of this done in the real world. So Nespresso, they actually used the business model canvas by Strategizer. And what they did is they originally came out with an Nespresso machine that was sold in retail stores. And that was before the Keurig and all these. That was the first one. And it was sold to houses and offices, right? Retail, Kmart and so forth, Target. They had an espresso club where they, talk to people and a reward type of system. But it was a one-time purchase, right? You buy it for $200 and that's it. It's a one-time purchase. So they said, how do we create a reoccurring revenue stream, right? We're looking at our revenue streams and we want reoccurring revenue, not a one-time sale. And so what they did was they said, let's focus on the pods and the razor blade example, right? And focus on selling the pods through different channels and mail order to the same people, but now we're having a repetitive reoccurring revenue monthly. We're going to ship you out the Nespresso pods versus currently, originally when they came out, they were point of sale right next to the machines. You went into Target, you went into Kmart, right, to Walmart to buy the pods. It wasn't a mail order, it wasn't subscription. So they looked at that model of subscription and changed it. So now they have 2 different revenue recurring streams, different product costs. Now they have different resources, right? They're actually much more on the coffee than just the technology of the machine. So it affects your entire business model when you start looking at how you're innovating, creating new revenue streams, who you're selling to. But that's just one example of real life on what you could do your business model. So in closing, what did we do today? Well, we examined purpose and how to create a culture of innovation, discussed business models and creating value, reviewed the need to continuously innovate or become obsolete, noted the need for proven innovation frameworks, explored being an ambidextrous organization, change your mindset to love the problem and not your solution, and focus on the customer's journey and jobs to be done to find unmet demand. Some insights I hope you take away: engage all your employees to transform the culture, create processes and structure for innovation to flourish, make innovation everyone's responsibility, set aside time and money to enable innovation, and move from product to business model innovation. test many ideas to reduce risk, and focus on the customer's jobs to be done. Love the problem, not the solution. So we're stopped there. We've got a couple of minutes for some questions. So please go ahead and unmute. I'd love to see your faces as well. And what questions do you have?
So the first question I have is where you talk about moving from product to business model innovation. But if your customers don't even like your product, the business model doesn't even matter.
Yeah, I would say if your customers don't like your product, yeah, you're in a space where you need to quickly look at what you do and how you create and capture value before you go bankrupt, right? Before you're the next blockbuster. So it's all about who the customer is and what their problem is. So once we define that, that's the most important. Then we can figure out how do we solve the problem? What's the solution to solve that problem the best way?
Okay, so I guess the thing that I don't understand is when you say test the business model and not the solution. Would maybe elaborate on what that means? Like, do you never test the solution?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go back to, I'm gonna do this. So when we talk about testing, the most important thing in any business model, the new idea, is the desirability. We think about three lenses, right? Mm-hmm. Do customers want this thing? Is it solving a problem? That's the first thing. The second one is, can we actually make money at this, right? If you're for profit. The last thing is, can we actually build this solution, right? Do we have the know-how? So the first thing is the customer and the problem. What is this problem this customer segment has? What are the most important problems? Maybe there's 10 of them. Let's focus on the important ones. We have to go out and gather that evidence to understand what we think the customer's segments are and their problems, and make sure that's real. Once we understand the biggest problems, you might have a preconceived notion of how to solve it. We need to understand the business model. Can we make money at it? Then can we build it? We can then start to go out, and after we've interviewed them, uncovered insights, figured out the problem, we don't have to go make this thing, right, to prove we can do it. We can actually create a pitch deck, right? Remember 10, 12 slides, and go back to the customer. I come back to Esther and say, hey, Esther, you told me these were your problems. These are the things you're trying to get done better than you currently are getting them done. And with these current alternatives, here is our solution that's going to do X, Y, and Z to help you get these problems done better. And here's our price, and here's how the thing works. Would you like to buy it, right? So after we've uncovered all of that information, then we come back with the offer to validate with you, the early adopter, the customer, that, yeah, perfect. Now you can go build it. And I've already give you evidence that I would buy that. You're going to meet my needs. The solution piece is part of that, right? That, here's how we're going to solve your problem, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. And then obviously you need to make sure you can actually build it.
Okay, thank you.
Good questions. Any other insights, key things that any of you are taking away from today? Comments?
Yeah, Brian, in terms of what we are doing, we have our solution includes a physical product as well as an app or software. So, thinking about what you have just explained in terms of the need to go through an iterative process, right? So we have something out there, and then we test it, and then we revise, and just going back and forth to make sure that the product is, perfect or in a good position to really capture the market and really be acceptable. So I guess the question is, a physical product vis-a-vis an app, based on your experience, where do you see the practicality in terms of getting things done quicker. So we're talking about a physical product versus software, for example.
Sure. Yeah. Well, services are much easier in general because you don't have to build anything. And then when you talk about products and technology and software, an app is a perfect example because we all know apps. We all download them every day. A lot of new startups are building apps. So think of it this way. The old way was, let's go in and get a bunch of coders who are really smart and good at this code, and we build this app. And then we go out and we try and sell it to the customer, or show them the end product saying, does this meet your needs? And they're like, yeah, it's okay, but not that interested. That is the old way of building something and then trying to sell it, versus you go to the customer and say, let me understand your problems. What are you trying to get done with your current software, your current app, your current product, whatever it is? Now you go back and actually build the code specifically to solve that problem. What a lot of people do now with, the old waterfall technology or even agile is they're building code just because they want to get complete with that project, that product, but it might not be what the customer wants. So let's go talk to the customer, find out what they want. We could even create a storyboard, say, here's what the app does, you download it, it does this, and this is the outcomes, and here are the things it does, without building a bunch of code, right, which is expensive. And the customer might say, well, yeah, I don't care about X, Y, and Z. All I care about is this. So a lot of times people that are building apps are much more efficient when we call it, the building the vaporware app versus actually doing all the coding until you really know what the customer wants. You're just wasting man hours of doing coding.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the no code way. So basically it's, talk to customers without developing a bunch of code first. Cool. Well, I know we're over time. Go ahead.
Oh, you made me think of a story. It's an old Steve Jobs story. It's the last product I think he was working on. They had the viability, they had the desirability, and it was how you can wirelessly charge multiple products at the same time. And they designed this whole thing, but physics didn't allow them to build it. So they never produced the product. I love your little 3 things there because you got to have all 3.
Yeah, and that's design thinking. Those are the 3 lenses of design thinking, which many of you probably have heard about or seen. So it works in very, very nice with what we're talking about. Well, this was awesome. You guys were a great group. Thanks for great questions. I hope you got some good insights or things you can take away today. If love to have you put any comments in the chat, good or bad, that your insights and takeaways. We appreciate your time. Cameron, I'll throw it back to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Brian, for leading another awesome session on corporate innovation. I threw a couple of links in the chat. Tomorrow night, we'll have our startup happy hour. So that's in collaboration with Startup Sac. So we'll be featuring 2 entrepreneurs in the greater Sacramento region, that being the founder and CEO of iRate, as well as EV Life. So join us for that conversation. And then on July 15th, we'll be back with the workshop with Josh Levine, who will be talking about building company culture. So sign up for those and join us for those sessions. And don't hesitate to reach out to Brian and I for support. And last but not least, we'll be sharing this recording as well as the PDF for those slides, and you'll be able to access that from there. So thanks for being here and pushing your ventures forward.
How can we access it?
I will be sending it via email.
Oh, okay, cool. If you remember, I think you and I chatted about me trying to reach out to Brian. I was wondering if we can arrange something. And I don't mean right now while it's all video, but I don't want to forget that.
He'll be CC'd on the email that goes out. So feel free to reach out to him there.
Thank you.
You got it.
All righty. Thank you all. Have a good one.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Ladies.